are going to be running a race. However, your starting position in this race will be decided by the answers to questions that we are going to be asking you.
So what?
It's a joke.
This activity is intended to explore how society favours one race over others.
People often confuse white privilege with being wealthy or being rich, and it isn't about that. What it's about is the absence of having to live with the consequences of racism.
Now, if the question applies to you, you will take a big step forward. If the answer to the question doesn't apply to you, you stay where you are.
I better win, man. Oh.
Okay, make sure you're on the start line. I see some cheaters already.
Yeah,
Feet behind the line.
If English is your parents' first language, take a step forward.
Oh, yeah.
If you have ever been the only person in the room of your race, take a step backwards.
For God's sake!
If you've never been asked where you come from, take a step forward.
If you've never had to be worried about your family being stopped and searched, take a step forward.
I don't get worried about if people ask me to stop and search.
The divide widens, and the inequality of their position becomes clear.
This is just like not fair now.
Farah, none of us are white. None of us are white. It's unfair.
The last question. If your parents have ever warned you about racism, take a step backwards.
If we were about to start a race, is this a fair starting point for us all? No. Mackay, how do you feel standing there in the field of runners?
I kind of feel a bit alone. I can't really see. I'm literally just by myself, more or less. I'm just a bit frustrated and annoyed that society nowadays really isn't fair. And I just wish everybody could be equal.
Farah!
It's kind of frustrating that, like, me and Sarah are just standing at the back here while the majority of people who may be white are, like, standing right at the front. That just frustrates me a bit because it's almost as in what society is today. I don't want this to be how it is, but it is. So it just gets a bit frustrating.
Henry, how are you feeling being right at the very front?
It feels quite weird because if you think about it, I think all of us should be at the same point. But sadly, the questions, the ways that they were put didn't favour some people, which I think is quite unfair.
On your marks. Get set. Go!
good evening to each and every one of you who has joined us this evening on the fifth episode of Teacher Talks. My name is Wajda Peterson, the producer of this all new podcast show, hosted under the auspices of PeaceJam South Africa. Teacher Talks is a podcast show that is designed to showcase our key issue areas at PeaceJam, to start a conversation and walk away with a way to bring about positive change. What are these key issue areas, you may ask, and why are they so important? The 10 key issue areas that PeaceJam uses to guide change within the community. Our philosophy at PeaceJam is if we were to achieve all 10 goals to their maximum potential, we would achieve world peace. Our PeaceJam mentors, PeaceJam ambassadors, and leaders have brought about positive and impactful change within these 10 key issue areas. The key issue area that we'll be getting into this evening is ending racism and hate. Tonight, we are joined by two very special guests, life coach and mentor, former principal of Fish Hoek High School, Gavin Fish, and life science teacher and grade head at Fish Hoek High School, Liesbet Joubert. Welcome, both of you. Welcome to the fifth episode of Teacher Talks.
Thanks,
You are
Vanya.
that.
Good to be
Thank
with you.
Very much privileged.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. Guys, I had the pleasure of having, it's so weird because like I have to wrap my head around saying Gavin and Lisbeth. Like normally it's a Mr. Fish, Mr. Bear, but I'm gonna try my best. You'll hear them say, Washa, it's Gavin. Washa, we'll manage it. I'll try. So like I said, I have had the privilege of, having Miss Joubert as my registration teacher for grade 10 up until grade 12. And then as well as having Mr. Fish lead the school as the principal all the way up until I matriculated. As you all may know, Mr. Fish is no longer the principal at Fish Hoek High School. Mr. Fish, or should I say Gavin, what have you been up to? Tell us a bit about your new life coach and mentor venture.
Okay. Well, my new life comes after my previous life. 33 years in education, 12 as principal of Fish Hoek High School. My team drove a very strong 2020 vision. And once we had reached that, I started to realize that I was coming to the end of a season of my life. And being 58 years young, I still had at least 2 decades to make good impact in another career. And I realized that one of the things that I was actually missing was quality time with parents and with teenagers, longer than 6 minutes before I got interrupted by a child, a parent, or somebody from the bureaucracy up above. And I'm really enjoying using my life experiences to help youth. I've got such a heart for single parents. They really are the heroes of the universe. And just young adults who are stuck, drifting, just feeling that there's got to be more to life than they're experiencing. So I've been a life coach for an entire month, and I'm enjoying it.
Wow. I can truly appreciate, the saying about single parents. I think honestly, we don't give them enough credit. It's such a big job. And so I think that's extremely amazing and powerful. And then, Mr. Bear, tell us a bit about yourself, who Lisbeth is, what is she passionate about?
Well, I'm obviously passionate about my subject, as anybody who's been in my class will tell you. I also realized long ago that you can't teach if there's no relationship with the child. So I think the relationship with children are even more important than the content. Um, I realized that you actually just teach yourself and whatever you are passionate about. Now, I think I'm quite passionate also about the environment. My class is very green. There's lots of trees and plants and trees
I
outside.
remember.
Yeah, so that's the sort of things I'm passionate, and just to get kids excited about the natural world.
Yes. No, definitely. I think that's so beautiful. Especially I think nature is just a different segment on its own, and I think just exposing kids to that, I think it's really beautiful. And again, thank you so much for joining. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, the key issue area that we'll be discussing this evening with Gavin and Lisbeth is ending racism and hate. Now, racism takes many forms and can happen in many places. It includes prejudice, discrimination, or hatred at someone because of their color, their ethnicity, or natural origin. People often associate racism with acts of abuse or harassment. However, it doesn't need to involve violent or intimidating behavior. Take racial name calling and jokes, or consider situations when people may be excluded from groups or activities because of where they come from. Now, in your opinion, Gavin and Lisbeth, how does race affect academic achievement?
Should I climb
Michael?
in first, Liesbet?
You're welcome.
Warda, there is nothing in a race group's gene pool that either makes them academically superior or inferior. One of the tragedies that we've inherited from our apartheid past is this notion that somehow there is superiority built into us. So there is a school in Limpopo province that is taught outside because of lack of facilities, and they achieve 100% pass rate. The top child in physical science in the Western Cape a couple of years back came from a massively under-resourced school. As I say, there's nothing in our gene pool as groups that predisposes us to academic success or not. But life is not that simple. What affects your academic achievement is often the circumstances rather than your academic potential. And it's shocking that the educational norms and standards have not been attained yet, that there's still schools without adequate electricity supply, sanitation, or water, that there are children attending from societies where fear is a norm, and any educator worth his salt knows that if you are living with fear and anxiety and stress, your learning is impacted. And you will battle to absorb anything you're being exposed to in class. The majority of South Africa's schools are still under-resourced, do not have adequate actual teaching time, are in classes so massively overpopulated that individual attention is just not going to happen. So academic performance is more determined by your circumstance than your race group.
Yeah, I think I want to add to
Lisbeth?
that. Yeah, where you are born often determines the opportunities that you'll be exposed to. I am actually Afrikaans speaking, so my problem with some of the kids that I teach, I know that English is also not their mother tongue. And I know that I have to teach them a science language, but they are learning it in their second language. And that is a huge barrier. I actually chatted to some of my girls in my class who lives in Massey. They said the Massey girls, the Massey kids, are taught in English because they have to write the exam in English, but their Xhosa speaking teacher can explain some of the things to them in Xhosa, which I can't do. And so, just that is a barrier, and that's a barrier to academic achievement. So just on the basis of inadequate language provision, these problems.
Definitely, I think that those are some very valid points, and especially with the barriers, it does create that sort of like fully learning or fully grasping what is being taught, and understanding. I think that a lot of the times, I mean, not just with language being one of the barriers, but I think sometimes the you can truly only learn something once you understand it. So if I mean, you could teach me something until, like, you can teach me, you can every day, like, come to your class, and you can teach me something. But if I'm not gonna stop and be like, you know what, I actually don't understand this one bit, could you, and sort of help me or guide me with it, or maybe perhaps explain it or give me a better example. So I think that definitely also just the understanding sometimes, and understanding what it is that you are being taught, and not just letting it go through, because sometimes, like most of the times, we can do something, or we are held back because we don't understand something. So we're not going to be as confident, or as, to our approach, because the lack of understanding or the misunderstanding, I think, definitely plays a role, and that also kind of, like, creates a barrier within itself. But I mean, that's something that could be broken down. Is to approach you as an educator and be like, ma'am, thank you so much. I just, unfortunately, I didn't understand this one part of the module. Could you kindly, just explain it differently, or is there any videos or any other examples, that you have? So I definitely think that those are some barriers. And then, just with speaking about prejudice, Lisbeth, first of all, what is prejudice, and how does it affect education, or how can it affect education if it isn't being affected within your school?
Well, prejudice is the preconceived ideas that you have about somebody based on where they come from, what they look like, and obviously it hampers progression. You can't. It denies people opportunities. So um, and it actually deprives the person with a prejudice of insights and valuable experiences they might have as well. And obviously, that's going to deprive, if children start to believe the prejudice that they are exposed to, that hampers them, it holds them back. And no child should
Definitely.
ever be exposed to prejudice from of any form.
Yeah, I mean, not just in schools, but just in general, in societies, in the community, growing up. I think that's where stigmas and stereotypes come in. It's that you from a specific group, or you are from a specific race, culture, or a specific age group, for example, or, being Muslim, being Christian, from whichever religion that you come from, and you put in this box, you put in this box, and this is how you should act, this is how you should speak, this is how you should carry yourself, this is it's literally putting on what you perceive someone to be onto them, and it's like, this is not my responsibility. It's like, what? Like, I was given something before, it's like, before I even had the opportunity to try something, someone is already has made their minds up about what it is that I'm capable of. So I definitely think that those are some good points that you raised. And, just gender discrimination being honestly, one of the most spoken topics, especially in youth, especially with this whole gender-based violence, and young, especially females, being exposed, and getting into situations, or not even falling prey, basically, of being in danger, and I would just like to touch on, Gavin, what do you understand by gender discrimination in education?
The legal discrimination against women has been chipped away at in the 33 years that I've been in education. When I came in, a woman was discriminated against based on whether she was pregnant or not. Your work tenure was dictated to by that, as just one example, and that has been systematically dismantled. But on ground level, it still exists. So quite often, as an example, boys take out their worst behavior on the female teachers. It is a socialized reality for them. It is a minority, but it does still occur. And then the misperception creeps in. Lady teacher battling with a boy's behavior has to take that boy to a man to sort them out. Now, we worked against that at Fish Hoek High School. For an example, Liesbet is a grade head with another female educator. So the worst behaved boys are taken to a senior woman to manage them. But even then, the teacher is empowered. The boy is not just sorted out by the senior, he's in conjunction with that educator. So we systematically break down preconceived ideas as to women's place, women's authority, women's skill in dealing with classroom situations as well. The hot potato is single-sex schools, because single-sex schools can be a hotbed of breeding negative attitudes towards women. But outstanding work is being done in many South African boys' schools in reversing this trend. And the boys coming from those schools have been strong defenders of women's rights. Life is co-ed, life is not single-sex. And that's part of the reason that I was so committed to co-ed education. But just because a school is co-ed does not mean that gender discrimination doesn't exist by definition. So, for example, still in schools, subjects are taken with a gender preference. So electrical technology and engineering, graphic drawing are traditionally domains of boys. But we've had girls at Fish Hoek High School coming top in both those two subjects. We have boys doing hospitality at Fish Hoek High School. And so we are reversing that trend, breaking down preconceived notions of this is masculine and that is feminine, and you will never cross the dividing line. Work in progress, Warda, work in progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, exactly. Would you like to add anything to that, Liesbet?
No, and I think we're also becoming more aware of people who are transgender. We have embraced that. We have learners who don't want to be gender neutral and who are comfortable to express who or what they are, and we are respecting that and giving them the space for that.
That's really amazing. I think LGBTQ plus is definitely, one of something that people struggle with in terms of like stereotypes and also norms, gender norms, all of these things. People have pronouns. Some people are non-binary. Exactly.
Yes.
I think that's amazing that you as a school really, are reciprocative of this and are understanding and respect it. I think that one of the biggest things that LGBTQ plus, people within that community, they need respect. I think that is one of the things that society is so mean about, is not respecting them as a human being, based on which gender they associate themselves with, or no gender, for example. So I think that's amazing. Definitely I love it. I love that. And just
You're still
based
being
on
educated
some of the
as well.
Exactly. That's the thing. I think that you as educators as well, and we as humans, it's the world is ever changing. The world is ever changing and it's ever evolving, and it's like we're constantly learning, and sometimes we really have to be open to even unlearning certain things, And like for example, like last night, on the fourth episode of Teacher Talks, we were joined by one of two educators. Actually, one was an interpreter, and one was an actual guest speaker. And she taught me something as well. So something that I didn't really think of. Like my perspective wasn't in that sort of like a leeway of thinking. So we definitely have to constantly encourage ourselves to be open-minded to learning and even unlearning certain things. So just going back to challenges, and speaking of racism and hate, what are challenges that children from your school, when it comes to racism and hate experience, is there a tolerance put in place for no racism and hate? And how do you as educators help them overcome these challenges if there are, single cases, or if there are any students that are falling prey of being a victim to racism and hate?
Well, you know what? It's often the subtle signs that you don't actually pick up on in class, and the only way that we can deal with things is if we are told about it. The overt things, obviously, we see and we can hear, but we are really depend on learners to have to trust us to deal with their issues and come and talk to us about it. Um, I had three learners a few months ago in my class who said they went to a restaurant and they were just being given a very strange look by the owners. And I said, "But what were you doing?" And I said, "We were just playing our music and hanging out." And I just realized, and I said, "It's probably an old man." I said, "Yes." And I said, I don't think it's something racist. I think there's an age thing. Your music might have been off-putting, and
Yes.
they perceive it as being racist because they are
Yeah.
children of color. And I said, you know what? You should have actually have the gumption to go up to him and say, "Sir, is it our music or whatever?" But they didn't have
Yes.
the courage to do that.
Yes. Yes.
So I think as long as we have an open door and we can, give people, trust them, give them our ears and
Yes.
honest, then
Definitely.
that's fine. Yeah.
Do you
We
have
also
any?
had-
Yes.
No, we also
Apologies.
had learners with natural hair. To fit natural hair into traditional school hair rules was also, it often leads to various interpretations that we often have to battle with each other with, and then we sort it out. We talk about it, and there's just
Yes.
many different interpretations of the traditional rules. But I think at Fish Hoek we have really sort of come a long way, and boys have plaits and braids and weaves
Yeah.
just as girls. Yeah.
That's really
So,
amazing. Yes, no, I think as I mentioned, okay, so we have a comment. Unela Msutu, she actually also went
yeah.
to, yes, remember she was also in
Yes.
your registration class. Do you remember her, ma'am?
Yes, of
So
course I remember you, Nala.
yes, welcome, Unela. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. So Unela says that she has definitely experienced the hair fight in high school too. I have definitely, and speaking of this, like, how do you guys deal with it? Is it okay? Is there specific guidelines put in place, like that you can they wear their afro, for example? What are the rules around that?
No, obviously natural hair is absolutely fine. They can have the afro. If it gets too long, obviously in the eyes, but that's a general rule for
Yes,
your hair doesn't obstruct your vision. So
yes, of course.
afros are fine. It can be braided, weaved, it can be left natural, and yeah,
Yes.
that's all allowed.
Okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. And then, Mr. Fish, would you like to say anything on this?
Definitely.
Of course, he's eagerly waiting for us to finish. Hand it over. Okay, so sorry, Mr. Fish, sorry. So Unela says she is Unela Sutu says that she is glad that things are changing at school. Change is inevitable and constant, and we need to obey to the school rules. So well done to the both of you. I think that change is bound to happen, and I think positive change and inclusivity is always the best way to go. So, job well done on that. Gavin Fish, you may take the stand.
Um, Just in response to Yanela, hi Yanela, I had to sit and listen as well. There were facets to the hair debate that I didn't understand, and I had certain assumptions as to what would be okay and would not be okay. And we've become progressively more accommodating through the years, as our understanding of each other has grown. But there's another issue here, Wilder, the re-racialization of South African schools. There's an ever diminishing number of schools that represent South Africa's population. Now, Fish Hoek High School, we had pupils that were white, colored, and black African across our landscape. We came from 3 different communities.
Yeah.
There were different economic classes. It is a wonderful
Yes.
melting pot of South Africa's future generations. But
Definitely.
unfortunately, as I said, that is not the case. And we are living in a multicultural, multiracial society. And yet schooling is not, with the exception of, as I say, an ever diminishing number of schools. Of course, every school has a code of conduct which says 0 tolerance for any form of racism. But all too often, that's just in a file. And you may know where that file is, and you may be aware of it to a lesser or greater extent. But it is at ground level, and which is why Liesbet made comments about the fact that it is often unspoken or underspoken and not heard. But the pupils have to own this. It is not a function of the power of the principal to ensure that no racism happens in his school. Of course, I've got a burden of care. Of course, I must protect all individuals. But change is also going to come about by the youth, confronting,
Definitely.
contesting, asking questions
Definitely.
of each other. If a child happens to have a home situation that has disposed him against a certain race group, that child needs to be educated. If all he faces is massive censure, he will retreat. His views will not change. In fact, his views will be hardened. We need to create the opportunity for youths to ask questions rather than to make statements, and to allow me to be educated from my position of ignorance. So important, Warda.
Yes. No, definitely, you've said it, and Lisbeth has said it before. I think, especially with, let's use Unela says profound words, Mr. Fish. So yes, so thank you so much, Unela, for engaging, and just opening up the platform for whoever's watching to say hello, to say where you're watching from. If you have any questions for either one of the speakers or myself, please do not hesitate to comment. And then just going back to what you said, Mr. Fish, as well as Lisbeth, you both said that, yeah, sometimes it is very evident, but sometimes it also isn't. So it is definitely, I personally feel that we're not gonna know everything. The thing is, like, if I'm not told something, I like well, there's this one saying, I can't get to it now. For example, if I just assume that you're supposed to know something, and then you'll be like, must I smell that is how you feel? Or it's like do you know what I mean? So it's we use that saying in our daily lives, and it's actually, we don't realize the power that it actually holds, because the thing is, we won't know unless you tell us. And that goes for anything. That goes for, I'm not just talking about this topic, but for everything. If you aren't communicating what it is that you're are wanting, or that you are wanting to find out, or what your intentions are, or if you are sitting with an issue, if you aren't communicating or reaching out for help, I know that it is not easy. We all know this. But I think, if especially youth, if you are dealing with something, be it bullying, be it injustice, if you feel that you are in a position where you are being mistreated, or anything, if you've got a problem, I definitely think that you need to take that first step, and you need to trust in the people that are educating you every single day. I mean, you spend youth spends more time at school than what they do at home. So it's like that's basically their second home if you think about it. I mean, they're getting taught life. They're getting taught, what it is. I mean, they literally they're getting educated. So what they can do from their side is, because it is a two-way street. You as educators, you want to help. That is why you are there. You want to educate these students. You want to help pave and mold them into the future generation. That is why you are there. You are wanting to help them and rear them and teach them. So I think it should really be a two-way street. I think it definitely should. Like I said, you won't know, someone won't know something unless you tell them directly. And again, yes, it may not be easy, but if you are dealing with something, go and speak to someone that you trust at school, and open up about it and tell them, look, ma'am, sir, this is the situation, this is how I feel. And that way, not only will the educators feel like, oh my word, this student is trusting me, but also the sense of they will feel like they can help. They will feel, because at the end of the day, all these issues are coming out, but then it's like you as educators feel so helpless because you weren't in a position, or you weren't given that opportunity to assist and to help and step in. So definitely, definitely reach out. If anyone who is watching, who is a student, or who, not just in education, if you are dealing with a problem, or if you are feeling a certain way about something, don't hesitate to go and address it. And also, the thing is, what's really nice about this world, especially like post-COVID, obviously we are still in the global pandemic, but after lockdown and during lockdown, a lot of webinars, platforms, a lot of people became very outspoken, and these type of hard topics were really started being spoken about. So I think, it's definitely a positive change in terms of leading the conversation and opening the conversation. So I think definitely with that positive change in terms of having these conversations, just go for it. And yes, it's going to be hard, but if you want something done, if you want a positive outcome, or a different outcome, then you're going to have to do something you've never done before. So yeah, if there's anything, do you guys have anything you want to add to that, or like any disagree, agree?
Yeah, it's a
No,
good summation out of that.
I agree with you. We live in a time that's more open and fair. And I think
Yes, exactly.
kids
No,
embrace it a lot
definitely.
easier than adults. Anyway.
Exactly. I think that's also like one of the kind of barriers, is that a lot of like our parents, our elders, they are stuck in their generation. And I think sometimes it takes like youth to be like, educate them, or like, this is what's happening, or so I think just as PeaceJam South Africa has said, we need to create a safe space to have the uncomfortable dialogue around racism, discrimination, and hate, and about absolutely anything under the sun. Like, if you feel, not just with this specific topic, as I mentioned, with our key issue areas, we've got the first episode, the first discussion we had was with Simonstown School, and then we had a topic with a topic of discussion with so you apologies, so let me break my own words. So Unella said, the topic seems taboo in most schools. Definitely create a platform to open up and express how the students feel. Speaking of platform, do you as a school have this sort of thing? Is there, is this implemented in life orientation? I know this sounds really bad, but guys, it's been almost 7 years, 8 years, but is it being implemented in life orientation, guys? I'm so bad. Don't come at me. Who was my life orientation teacher, guys? Who was it? I can't get to the name right now. I really can't get to the name, but please, apologies. It's been 7 years. Um, So yeah, so is there like sort how do you guys address this? Is this being addressed? Is there a space where students can, like, for example, like after school, like in like life orientation curriculum, for example, is there a platform for this?
I think they do talk about that in life orientation. Sadly, I don't teach life orientation. I can just speak from my subject where we talk about
Yes.
the biological basis of species, and then I always ask them about race because and then
Yes.
they realize that race is actually completely meaningless. It's a artificially created concept. There is no difference in species in races. So, and I use that and I tell the kids, you see how
Yeah.
absolutely absurd it
Bizarre it
actually is
is.
to,
Yes.
if you look at the natural world, it doesn't exist. So it's a man-made concept. And then I always tell them, and I tell them how amazing it is that we originated in Africa, human race originated in Africa. And I said to them, it's the woman that was unhappy with the same diet every year decided she wants to move to Europe. I said, European people are actually much newer, or they are incomers. We Africans have been here longer. so so African knowledge and African indigenous knowledge is old and sacred, and we should treat it that way. And I try to make them proud of being Africans because we live in here, although I have a lot of European ancestors, obviously long ago, but we must be proud of our heritage. And
Definitely.
we
I
Definitely.
think
are.
one,
Mr. Fish.
I,
Yes.
I
Go
think
for
one,
it.
the vast majority of educators are human beings way beyond their subject matter. And they address
Definitely.
these issues proactively, but also reactively. When something happens in a class that is not okay, they're just quality human beings. And I was privileged to teach with so many of them, and they do address these issues. I was a history teacher. It's the most incredible platform
Yeah.
to unravel our country's past and to build values and understandings of human rights and responsibilities. Perhaps we'll get onto that somewhere
Yes.
through that subject. Yeah.
Yeah. So PeaceJam South Africa has said can explore the opportunity around collaboration with Fish Hoek High School on how we can bring in our compassion in action curriculum in life orientation. So we have an amazing award-winning curriculum with different programs, obviously to best suit each school. And as I mentioned, with the PeaceJam hubs, that I wanted to implement. So what I'll do is I will touch base with you, Liesbet, and then we can chat after this. Definitely, I think it's because PeaceJam South Africa is so amazing in terms of what it is that they teach and the values, the important things that we really need to know, like compassion, being compassionate, those type of things, empathetic, those really really important fundamental things. Okay, cool. So Jenny Chadwick, welcome Jenny. So she said, is there a social worker counselor at your school? I can answer this question because I know Fish Hoek represent, guys. Fish Hoek represent over here. So if I'm not mistaken, it's Mrs. Singh, right? Is she still perfect, perfect, perfect. So the answer to your question, Jenny, is 100% yes. And I myself, have spoken to Mrs. Singh when I was a student at Fish Hoek High School. Extremely recommend her if anyone at Fish Hoek High School is going through something that teachers do not know about. kindly go and see Mrs. Singh, because she's honestly, she's amazing at what she does. She is sympathetic, she's empathetic, she makes you feel so comfortable, and that is what we need. That is what youth needs, to feel as if there is a space that they can express how they are feeling. They can bring about what it is that they're going through without having a preconceived sort of a perception of you or being judged. So definitely, yes, Jenny says it is essential, 100% agree, and Fish Hoek High School proudly does have it. So awesome. So sorry guys, I answered that question, but Mr. Fish, it seems like you would like to say something. So kindly, the floor is yours.
The school also has Mrs. de Villiers as the guidance counselor. And Mrs.
Yes.
King is a full educational psychologist, but she serves, they both serve an incredibly large pastoral role. They are both too
Yes.
busy. But also our grade heads are more than disciplinarian oversight in their grade. They have a compassionate and an empathetic and a counseling role as well. We've just got
Yes.
a good understanding of boundaries and
Yes.
which type of scenario is more appropriate for
Yes.
the counselors as opposed to the
Yes.
grade heads.
Yes, I think that's very important, with because a lot of the times youth normally open up when they feel a sense of someone can relate to them. So I think when it does come from that grade head student, when they can speak to this grade head student about whatever it is they're going through, there is that sense of not immediate opening, but that sense of, what, you understand me, you are of my age, I can relate to you. So I think that's also really amazing that you guys have that. So well done on that. And then just as I mentioned with COVID and with the global pandemic, one of the things that our youth struggle with is mental illness. And one, as I mentioned, one of the many impacts racism, hate, and prejudice is one's mental health. We have seen and heard, read about countless students, youth falling prey to taking their own lives, to suffering in silence. And Gavin, with your work as a life coach and mentor, have you experienced this firsthand? If yes, how did you handle this? If no, how would you handle this if the situation were to arise?
Okay, so based on a whole month's experience as a life coach,
A month, a month.
Much longer, much longer.
Definitely much longer for life, actually.
there's an incredibly important distinction. A life coach is not a counselor and is not a therapist. I will meet with you today and I will help you to plan your tomorrow. I
Yes.
cannot reach back and change your beginning, but I'm going to sit
Yes,
with you today.
definitely.
I'm going to motivate you. I'm hopefully going to offer you some life experience. And together we're going to set forward an action plan, and we're going to meet and laugh and cry about how you're doing in your action plan. And we're going to acknowledge that you've got a larger life within you. So what I generally tell people is, if you feel incredibly strongly on an issue, for example, race, be very assertive, but try not to be aggressive. The second you are aggressive, anger static gets in the way of your message. And I don't not hear you. I actually become negatively disposed towards your message. However, if you are assertive, and if you have found your voice, I will listen to you. Your voice will be compelling, and it is likely to impact my thinking. That's just one life skill that I believe is incredibly important. But I believe that covers all manner of situations over and above racism.
Yes, definitely. I think that's so true. And Lisbeth, with racism and hate, what are your thoughts on the statement racism and hate starts at home?
I completely agree with that. Sadly, parents is just the sort of the way they often just sort of offhand make comments about people, other people, and that has definitely find its way into children's heads and into their language. And it must be, if you grow up in a home that's so prejudiced, it must be so hard. The world must be a tough place for you because you are not at home in the world. Because what you see
Yes.
at school is obviously different, and that must be, I think that must add to your mental unhealth. But it definitely starts at home, and for children to question their parents, so even from a young age, it must be hard. And
Yes.
I feel parents who do that limit their children's chances of being successful in this world. They isolate them actually from
Yes.
experiences and things that can broaden their horizons. So
Yes.
I feel sorry for children who are, in any way prejudicial towards people from other religions, other races. Yeah, but I
Yeah,
think it
I
does
think
start at home.
yes, definitely. I think with that, with racism and hate and with and starting at home, I think that you miss out if you limit yourself, and if you
Mm,
limit yourself to a specific race, if you limit yourself to a specific group,
mm,
you limit yourself to learning all these amazing like cuisines, like their food, their culture, like the languages that everyone speaks, and all these like adverse diversity, that we as
mm,
human beings are so capable of, and that we are born with, or that we, I think that is one of the biggest things that people who are a bit racist, or who are still hating based on discrimination and based on color, they are missing out. Because my
mm.
word, like when I was at Fish Hoek High School, I promise you, I had friends of different color, and I absolutely loved it. Like I absolutely loved having my white friends. I absolutely loved having my black friends. Like that was just me. I was the person that would talk to absolutely anyone under the sun, and literally, like I didn't have any racial issues. At Fish
I
Hoek High
remember
School.
Warda.
I
Mm.
mean, you know me,
I
guys.
remember.
I
You know,
remember too. Yeah.
literally, like I honestly, like I'm just that person that really believes that everyone, we all deserve a chance.
Mm,
We all deserve to be treated the same way, not based on the way that we look, not based on where we come from. I think so. I definitely, me personally, like I had the best time of my life at Fisher High School. Like honestly, I had met so many different people from different walks of life, and I definitely think that you yeah, it's like Lisbeth said, it's limits that you put in your mind. Why limit
mm,
yourself? Why limit yourself if you can have 10 friends of all different colors of race? Like honestly, you can, like for example, I'm Muslim, right? So Lisbeth, you can come eat for me at Eid when it's my Ramadan, when it's my Eid, and then I can go and have Christmas at
some
your place in
dalchies.
December. You can have some dalchies with me, and
Please.
it's like all these amazing things that people really miss out on when
Mm,
having these barriers and when having these discriminations. Guys, oh my goodness, we are literally like 12 minutes to the end of this podcast. I think tonight has just been so amazing and so powerful and very educational. And we are a little bit running over time, but it's okay, we'll make it work. And then just talking about privilege and power, to the both of you, do you think that privilege and power are attributes to racism and hate? What are your thoughts?
I Warda. Lord Acton said that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You see that in every nation and every continent and every people group on earth. I don't believe that any society is immune to that.
Definitely.
I also believe, and I mentioned it a while back, there must be far greater emphasis on human responsibilities than human rights. The only reason we need to defend human rights is because people are denying their human responsibilities. I have a responsibility to treat you with dignity in a manner that is not prejudicial at all. That is my responsibility, and I need
There
to
you
stand
go.
to that. And then there would be less emphasis on human rights. Of course, there must be, because human rights are abused on a daily basis. I'm not discrediting that. I am arguing for human responsibilities. I saw a meme yesterday about somebody, and it said that this person is only a millionaire, not a billionaire. The reason they're not a billionaire is because they give away millions and millions of their money in an acknowledgement that society is in a critical state. And that to be a billionaire in this age shows moral deficiency on your part. There are increasing number of incredibly wealthy and privileged people who are giving away significant percentages of their wealth to medical research, etc. We can say it's a drop in the ocean, fair enough, but there is an acknowledgement that with privilege does come responsibility. I've taught in elite schools my whole career, but that doesn't make us elitist. Because I am privileged to have had an outstanding, unfairly resourced education does not mean that I can lord it over others. It means that I need to take the responsibility that has come from that privilege and make it work for others. Somebody said recently to me, if you are wealthy, make a bigger table, not a higher fence. And I think those of us who
Love
acknowledge
that.
our privilege, we need to build longer tables and not higher fences.
Definitely. Oh, that's so powerful. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that so much. Honestly, it's so true. I think know your privilege. I think that is definitely something that is the start of it. And know your privilege and use your privilege to your advantage in like to an advantage, not to your advantage, to an advantage in the sense of, like you said, make that table longer, be able to give of share what it is that you perhaps have of that is perhaps more than enough, to give to someone that possibly doesn't have, or so I definitely think, and I love what you said about the responsibility. If it's so crazy because I actually watched this TikTok video the other day, and it was oh no, it wasn't a TikTok, it was a YouTube video. And basically it was these kids giving motivational speeches, right? And this one kid at the end says, if I can be kind, you can too. So it's merely that that is so powerful, because the thing is, it is our responsibilities, if we as human beings take responsibilities to treat people, as Mr. Fish said, to treat people with that dignity, to treat people with that sense of respect. Honestly, those are the first steps to possibly ending and overcoming like in like this harmony that we are living in, and that we are faced with. So I definitely think that that is extremely powerful. So thank you very much, Mr. Bay and Mr. Fish, for that. And then just getting into something I wanted to share with you guys is before we actually get into steps to take, steps that we can take to fight racism and hate. I would like to share two powerful quotes with you. So one of them is, injustice for one is injustice for all. And that's by Dr. Martin Luther King. And then the second quote is, prejudice is a burden that confuses the past, threatens the future, and renders the present inaccessible. And that's by the great Maya Angelou.
Hmm.
You know,
So
I
true.
think, I think that those are two extremely powerful quotes, and just getting into, as I mentioned, we'll discuss this. Just very very briefly, we'll get into this. I just want to see the comment that we have in the comment section. So perfect. So PeaceJam says, how can we continue having the conversation with Gavin and Liesbet? Will be great to collectively collaborate, create a peace building vision for the far South Peninsula. Definitely. So, myself and Liesbet, we will be in touch. And then, Gavin, you and I can also be in touch with regards to that. Okay,
Brilliant.
awesome. So thank you. Yes, cool. And then just quickly getting into the 8 steps on how we can get through, fighting racism and hate. Okay, perfect. So the first step that we can take out of the 8 steps, and this is something that we just mentioned, is learn to recognize and understand your own privilege. One of the first steps to eliminating racial discrimination is learning to recognize and understand your own privilege. Racial privilege plays out across social, political, economic, and cultural environments. Many, many levels of privilege. Using the privileges that you have to collectively empower others requires being aware of these privileges and acknowledging the implications. So that is definitely something that Mr. Fish has touched on. So that's amazing. And then the second one is examine your own bias and consider where they may have originated from. This is also something that we spoke on. Miss Joubert spoke about this, and when I asked you the question about could it start at home, what messages did you receive as a kid about people who are different from you? What was the racial or ethnic makeup of your neighborhood, school, or religious community? What were those groups, or what were those institutions made up of? What race were they made up of? What group were they made up of? And why do you think that that was the case? These experiences produce and reinforce bias, stereotypes, and prejudice, which can lead to discrimination. Examining our own bias can help us to work to ensure equality for all. And then the third step is validate the experiences and feelings of people of color. Another way to address bias and recognize privilege is to support the experience of people and to engage in tough conversations about race and injustice. As Mr. Joubert said, have these conversations. Come to them, and if injustice, or if you feel like you are being hated on based on the color of your skin, kindly address these things and speak about it. We cannot be afraid to discuss oppression and discrimination for the fear of getting it wrong. Take action by learning about the ways that racism continues to affect our society. And then the fourth step is challenge the colorblind ideology. It is a pervasive myth that we all live in a post racial society where people don't see color. Perpetuating a colorblind ideology actually contributes to racism. When Dr. Martin Luther King described his hope for living in a colorblind world, he did not mention that we should ignore race. It is impossible to eliminate racism without first acknowledging race. Being colorblind ignores a significant part of a person's identity and dismisses the real injustice that many people face as a result of race. We must see color in order to work together for equality and equity. The fifth step, call out racists or jokes or statements. Let people know that racist comments are not okay. If you are not comfortable or do not feel safe being confrontational, try to break down their thought process. Ask questions, as Gavin said, ask questions. For example, that joke doesn't make sense to me. Could you explain it? Or you may be kidding, but Is this what it means when you are saying that type of thing? Remember that not saying anything or laughing along implies that you agree. I will say it again. Remember that not saying anything or laughing along implies that you agree. Sixth step, find out how your company or school works to expand opportunities for people of color. Systematic racism means that there are barriers, including wealth disparities, criminal justice base, and education and housing discrimination that stack the deck against people of color in a workplace or at school. It is important for companies and schools to address these issues and promote a culture of equity. Second last step, be thoughtful with your finances. Take a stand with your wallet. Know the practices of companies that you invest in and the charities that you donate to. Make an effort to shop at a small local business and give your money back to people living within the community. And I think that I can personally say that I think we as South Africans do this. We support local. I mean, we have the saying called "local is liquor." Come on, guys, so I think that that is what we as South Africans can proudly say that we do. We support one another in terms of businesses, and I think that that is definitely something that we do as a country, and I'm so grateful that we do that. And then the eighth and final step is adopt an intersectional approach in all aspects of your life. So remember that all forms of oppression are connected. You cannot fight against one form of injustice and not fight against the others. Many survivors of domestic violence are also faced with racism and other forms of oppression. We must recognize and support survivors' unique experiences, learn about domestic violence, and how you can help end it. Again, those were 8 steps that we can take towards ending hate and racism. Well, there you have it, everyone. Ending racism and hate, Lisbeth and Gavin. Thank you so much for being a guest. On the fifth episode of Teacher Talks. It was an absolute pleasure having you both online this evening, as well as hearing your thoughts and understanding on the topics that we discussed. Thank you so much for joining.
Absolute
Thank you,
pleasure.
Warda. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. Yes, I love it. And I think, like I said in the beginning of the call, this was like extra special because I went to Fish Hoek High School, and I got the privilege of, again, Unela says, great session, you guys. Lovely seeing Mr. Fish and Miss
Oh,
Joubert. Awesome.
yeah,
Thank
that
you
was
so
so sweet.
much. Oh, listen, did you hear that, Unela? Miss Joubert says that you were
Yeah,
absolutely sweet. No, she definitely is,
sweetified.
exactly. So again, thank you so much. And just before we go, is there any words of encouragement that you have? Do you have any final words for the audience watching?
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Dr.
Definitely.
Sue said, a person is a person no matter how small. Yeah.
Wow. Wow, those are two very powerful quotes. Again, I'm so proud to have been a part of Fish Hoek High School. I'm a proud past pupil. I am so grateful for the things and the people that I met, and all the experiences that I had at Fish Hoek High School. So again, to both of you, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we'll definitely keep in contact. Myself and Lisbeth, as well as Gavin,
Please.
we will definitely keep in contact and chat more. But again, thank you so much. You guys must have a lovely evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Warda. Thank you.
It's only a pleasure.
I will.
Perfect. Guys, the fifth episode of Teacher Talks. We were joined by a former principal who is now a life coach and mentor, Gavin Fish, and life science and grade head Miss Joubert, Liesbet Joubert. Guys, it's so weird to say, call them by the first name. As I said in the call, I was a past pupil at Fish Hoek. I would like to say a big thank you to absolutely everyone who has joined and who has stayed with us on the call this evening. And even if you couldn't stay, you can always come back and watch it, as the video will be saved on PeaceJam South Africa's Facebook page. Again, you guys could have been absolutely anywhere doing something, but you guys have decided to be with us this evening. So again, thank you. And, thank you to PeaceJam South Africa for hosting the fifth episode of Teacher Talks on their platform, and not forgetting our amazing tech team. Thank you so much. I'd like you guys to catch and stay tuned to our socials. Catch the six guys and the final episode. The final episode of Teacher Talks. It's coming to an end. This podcast is coming to an end. I cannot believe it's just like we just had the first episode, and now we're going on to the sixth. So stay tuned to our socials. Next week, Wednesday, same day, same time, 7 o'clock on PeaceJam South Africa's Facebook page. And stay tuned to our socials for more announcement and who the guest speaker is next week, as well as what key issue area we will be covering. Awesome. So, just calling all educators, be it teachers, principals, student teachers, advisors. As you may have seen in our previous events, workshops, conferences, and facilitating, that we have had the amazing opportunity of creating. As I mentioned earlier in the call, we have an amazing award-winning program, which we'd be absolutely delighted to share with you and have you implement these different programs according to your schools. How do you go about this, you may ask? Reach out to us on our socials. Contact us. We are at PeaceJam South Africa on Facebook, at PeaceJam SA on Instagram, as well as Mentoring Peace Builders South Africa on Facebook, and at Mentoring Peace Builders SA on Instagram. Or you can always contact me, Warta Peterson, the Programs and Recruitment Coordinator, on taking the first step to not only finding out more information about our different programs that best suit your learning needs, but also creating and building a sustainable long-term relationship. Again, thank you to each and everyone who has joined us. Stay tuned to our socials, sending you all so much love and light. Until next time, peace out.